everyone, and welcome to the Asher Marketing Podcast. I'm Anthony Giuliano, and our guest this week is Nathan Dennison with the Allen County War Memorial Coliseum. Nathan, did I get all that right?
You got it perfect.
Well, thanks for joining us. You are going through a little bit of a change with your boss of many years, leaving the Coliseum.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So Randy Brown retired as of October 1st, and he had been there for 33 years in leadership. 31 years as the executive vice president and general manager. So just an amazing career of leadership, not only locally, but internationally within the venue industry. So it is a little bit of a transition period now. We've been just working, there are 4 vice presidents in the structure of the Coliseum staff, and I'm the newest of them at 15 years of experience.
Okay, I didn't realize that.
So it's kind of like one of those things where we're just kind of keeping on, doing what we do. He has trained us well.
Yeah.
And so at this stage, we're just keeping things going until the new general manager is in place.
Wow. Well, I would imagine there's benefits to having a team that's been around for quite some time, that not a lot of surprises, and most people have been able to will handle whatever comes their way because they've been through it before. Are there any challenges that come with a team that's been together for that long?
Yeah, planned retirements.
Yeah.
That's a real big challenge.
Especially when yours is pretty far off in the future.
It is, hopefully, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, mine is pretty far into the future. We have some impending retirements, not only in our senior management, but middle management staff as well. So it is one of those things where it's a huge challenge, where there's so much institutional knowledge of the building. It's a unique building in and of itself. So much knowledge of the inner workings of how everything works. And without a working building, we don't have much of anything.
Oh, sure.
So making sure that we're doing all the right things to replace, train strategically so that we have all of our ducks in a row and we can continue the great service that we're known for throughout the area. Yeah,
well, Randy was definitely someone who was well respected locally, and I'm sure, as you mentioned, within the industry, so he'll be missed. And hopefully you get someone who's nearly as good to start and eventually as good over time. It's going to be tough shoes to fill.
Absolutely. And so many people have said big shoes to fill, but his community leadership on boards like Visit Fort Wayne and the Fort Wayne Children's Zoo, and he's done some work with the airport. And so he just has contributed so much to this community. And he's well-deserved retirement, and I know he and his wife are going to stay in the area with family here. So you'll probably hear or see him again at some point down the road.
Well, good. And you just reminded me, you said Visit Fort Wayne, that Dan O'Connell is also retiring. So
that is correct.
You and I are going to be the only 2 left working here after a couple months. So.
Love my work with Visit Fort Wayne on so many levels.
Yeah. Well, they're great people there. Well, we're going to dive into some of those topics in more depth, but we want to start at the beginning of your career. So you grew up in DeKalb County.
Yep.
And start there, if you don't mind, and talk a little bit about what were you thinking about career-wise? Where'd you go from there, and did you stay on that path, or did you change that path?
Definitely changed.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, was involved in the student newspaper at DeKalb High School. Was inspired by a teacher, which is usually where it starts for a lot of people. Was involved that way. Learning the very basics of journalism and things like that. So I actually had a gap year between high school and college, which also coincided with my family's move to Northwest Ohio.
Okay.
So I went to a small community college in Northwest Ohio for a semester and then transferred to the University of Findlay, Ohio. And on my first week on campus, January of 1997, walked into the student newspaper advisor's office and said, "What can I do?" About a month later, I was the editor of the student newspaper.
So you could do everything is what the answer to that question was.
Yeah. At the time, it was the small school, the organization, student organization, was in a time of transition between some leaders. And I was given my first story assignment that day after the meeting.
Wow.
And for the first couple of semesters, it was myself, a designer, and the advisor.
Wow.
And that's it.
Wow.
And by the time I graduated, I had been editor for a few years. We had a staff of 15-ish.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Really developed in that school's communications program. So my emphasis was print journalism, but a communication degree.
Okay.
So I spent time working as a DJ on the campus radio station. Was part of the team that worked with their TV program, created their first TV program in the school's history.
Okay.
So worked in the sports information office of the athletic department a lot and really, really enjoyed that piece of it. Was working for the university's PR office. So I was really, really involved on campus in all the basics, the PR, the radio, the TV. Really didn't get into speech very much, but all of that sort of stuff, really immersed myself in all of the opportunities that a small school gives someone, and took so much away from all that experience. And
So was the trajectory when you started down that path, was it, I'm going to have a career in print journalism? Is that what you were thinking?
That's what I was thinking.
Okay.
Sports writer.
Sports writer. All right. So when did that start to change?
Well, I had actually, through contacts with my advisor there on campus, I think it was my sophomore year, I got a part-time job at an area print daily newspaper, sports department, started covering some high school sports, things like that as a college student. And then after a year of that, my junior and senior year, I worked for a larger daily newspaper that was a little closer to campus. Again, covering the college athletics, high school athletics, got to interview amazing people who came to the area for different sports functions or anything like that. And I think 3 years of working at a daily newspaper, albeit part-time, while in college, while also doing school, while also doing student newspaper, it was kind of like, wow, at the time I felt like I've done it.
Yeah.
And it was a situation where I want to kind of go beyond that a little bit.
Sure.
And so the first part of my job search was through my senior year looking for sports information at a college. However, I was going to be a December graduate. And that is the worst time to get a job at a college. You really need to wait till May, June, July, something like that during their transition. And so I didn't really find anything. And that's my senior year of college. I also had an internship at a local bank in their marketing department. And the student newspaper experience at college taught me Adobe PageMaker.
Yes, I was a PageMaker 6.5 user myself.
Yes, I learned. So I was learning how to lay out things, and I could lay out the student newspaper. And one of the local banks there in Findlay, Ohio, hired me as a intern to basically fill in for their marketing department during a maternity leave or something like that. And I ended up doing a lot of design, ads, flyers, posters. And so that led me to my first job after college at a small local financial institution, much closer to Fort Wayne.
Okay, so you had the background in working for a bank. You take that and what you've learned and you move into, is it more of a marketing position at this point?
It really wasn't a marketing position. It was very interesting. I kind of got the connection through a little bit of an extended family relationship, got connected with the local bank here just south of Fort Wayne, and it kind of a position created for me, but it wasn't marketing. It was more, the title was sales and training coordinator, which I didn't really have a lot of experience in sales. At the time, I was just out of college. But over time, my marketing skills it morphed into a marketing job for some time. So I got involved in customer relationship management software. And at that time in banking and financial services, that was the rise of the idea of incentive compensation for bank employees.
Okay.
So they wanted tellers and those types of folks to upsell. So part of what my role was to administer a incentive compensation plan. And coming straight out of college with a journalism background, it was like I was just
didn't even know where to begin. Probably.
I was just learning from day one.
Wow.
And made obviously a lot of relationships in the area, and that kind of that led me to my second role. And in my sales experience, my second job after college was working in a commercial printing field, doing sales, doing business-to-business sales.
So how do you end up in that position?
Well, it was a situation where I was looking to make a move away from the kind of the bank 8 to 5. We had just had our daughter, our oldest, and kind of wanted to spend some more time around home. So an opportunity came up where I would work from home, do commercial printing sales for a printing company that's based out of Peru, Indiana. But I would cover the areas that are closer to Allen County, where I lived at the time.
So this is a remote work opportunity before there were many of those opportunities.
Before it was really in vogue.
Before it was cool. Yeah. All right.
So worked selling. Trying to develop business. I know I called on Asher at one point to try to get their printing business. I don't remember if I had a success with that, but that's okay.
Okay.
But that lasted for a couple years, where that really determined was not my passion.
Sure.
I've had other connections with Asher too. I remember when I worked at with a financial institution, one of the things we were doing is going through a process of growing our physical presence into the Fort Wayne market.
Yep.
And we did a kind of a branding, like a rebrand thing. And I vividly remember a meeting in the bank boardroom with several Asher experts, led by Brian Engelhardt. So I've known him for a long, long time. And still run into him from time to time.
Yep. Brian was the first guest on this very podcast.
Well, you couldn't have a better one.
I agree.
In my opinion.
I agree. Brian, if you're listening, enjoy all the kudos.
He was, I quickly understood he was the smartest person in the room at that meeting.
And doesn't act like it, which is really nice. Yeah.
No,
when he and I worked together, I acted like it, but I wasn't. He didn't act like it and was. So
yes. So that was my first connection with Asher when I was working at for the small financial institution as we were going through a rebrand a little bit. So
so you move into a sales role, a traditional sales role, decide that's really not for you. Where do you go from there?
Found a job on Career Builder one day, and it was called Marketing and Media. Actually, it was Coordinator of Marketing and Media Services and Group Ticket Sales. The longest title ever in the world. Working for a company called Aramark at the Allen County War Memorial Coliseum. And so without a connection in the world to the Coliseum, other than attending Comets games as I was growing up, and maybe some car shows or boat shows or something like that, put my application in and started in that role in September of 2006, and I still remember my interview for that job was the day after Bob Dylan played a concert at Memorial Stadium, Wizard Stadium, outside in the rain the night before.
I vaguely remember that happening. I wasn't at the concert, but I vaguely remember.
And all I know was that everybody that I was interviewing with was like dead tired because they were all out in the stadium until 2 a.m. Cleaning up the mess from Bob Dylan.
And this is when the baseball stadium used to be in what is now the extended parking lot of the Coliseum.
So interviewed, got the job.
And they were so tired, they were like, you're hired.
That's probably a good reason why I got it, but they were exhausted.
I think that's happened to me a couple times too.
So, started there in 2006 and was in that role was a lot of different things. It was event marketing, a little bit of media relations, working with event promoters, placing newspaper ads and radio ads and TV ads. It was before we even had social media,
Yep.
Really to speak of. So it was a lot of traditional event marketing. We at the time we worked with an agency to do our newsletters and to do our design things, and then over a few years, again, those skills that started with PageMaker 6.5
Yep.
and kept on progressing a little bit, kind of moved into more of a traditional marketing role where I took over some of those design projects for the Coliseum. And as my career kind of progressed, really started, I guess, showing more interest in overall management. So I was in that role working for Aramark, but really an integral part of the Coliseum team for the first 7.5 years of my career there.
Okay.
There was a senior management member who retired, and that kind of was the impetus for a little bit of a corporate organization restructure there. And so the role of VP of sales came open, and with me having 7 years of experience there, I was kind of filling in a sales role for probably a year prior to that job change. So had an interview and actually resigned from my Aramark job one day, started my county job.
Walked across the hall.
The next day, stayed in the same cubicle for a few weeks.
Yeah.
And so in total, I just passed my 15-year threshold there at the Coliseum. So as a part of the senior management team, and I love it.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So most people are familiar with the Coliseum as attendees of, as you mentioned, Comets Games or, concerts or, other events. I've been there for circus. I think I was there for, when my son was very young, some kind of Bear in the Big Blue House or something event.
Yeah.
But tell us a little bit about the organization, things that people maybe don't know. The fact that it's a county entity, I think, is underappreciated, and I'll get out of my depth pretty quickly if I try to describe more than that. But tell us some of the realities of the Coliseum from your perspective.
There are so many myths out there.
Yeah.
It's kind of like an urban legend kind of thing. It's funny. We're a department of Allen County government, so there are lots of county employees there. There are also Aramark employees. Aramark is a third-party service contractor that mostly handles our food service. And so there are some people who work for Aramark. There are people who work for a security contractor who, provides 24/7 security and event security. There are also people there who work for some staffing agencies that provide housekeeping services and overnight changeover crews. But in so many ways, we try to treat everybody, regardless of who pays their paycheck, as one Coliseum team.
Okay.
And that's what Randy was always so good at preaching, that we're a team. And so that's probably a little bit of an unknown thing that people don't know. Prior to the pandemic, we had gone basically 60-some years without any outside government support to pay our daily operations. And that's a big thing. And you go to other cities and you look at their convention centers or their arenas or their stadiums. So many municipally owned venues are county or city or state general tax supported. And that's not what the Coliseum does. Now, the pandemic has thrown that completely out the window, obviously. And we're grateful for the county's support in this time. But that's a big myth, too, in that, yes, there are some funding mechanisms in place for the Coliseum to pay for some things, like renovation, expansion, capital expenses, like the big ticket items. But our day-to-day operations, utilities, salaries, marketing, insurance, those kinds of things, ideally are all user client generated revenue. So that's a big point of pride for us, in that we went so long in that status without taking any other funds, but thanks to the pandemic, of course. So that's another myth. 60 or more % of our visitors come from outside of Allen County.
Okay.
So I know you've heard those numbers kind of before for other types of attractions in town, and that's definitely true. So, we've had concerts where we can look at zip code data for purchasers through our ticketing provider, and we can know where they're coming from.
Yep.
And that really helps. Of course, we could do the old license plate check through the parking lot, the real old-fashioned way.
That might take a little longer. Yeah.
We haven't done that in a long, long time.
So tell me a little bit about your role. How does it fit in, and what's your role within the team, and what does your specific team look like?
Sure. Like I mentioned at the beginning, there are 4 VPs in the senior management team. We have VP of Finance and Chief Operating Officer. We have VP of Operations. We have VP of Event Services. And that person really oversees all the departments of the Coliseum that interact with the guests on a regular basis.
Okay.
And then myself as VP of Sales.
Okay.
So, my team really, the departments that I oversee really overlap a lot with Aramark, our food service provider. And so I oversee our event management team. So we have a full-time event manager, and we have several part-time event coordinators. We have a marketing and media coordinator who does our graphic design, social media, PR, works with events, my former role.
Okay.
And so I oversee that position. Our catering sales department is who works with all of our clients who do catering. And then our director of premium seating. Okay. That department handles all of our club seats, our private luxury suites. So I have some oversight of that department. And also a 5th person is our corporate partnerships manager.
Okay.
And so I oversee that role too. So I have a lot of different...
Yeah, that's a pretty big role.
A lot of different areas, but they don't just report to me. They report to other managers.
Sure.
But I would always claim them as my own, just because it's just a great, diverse group of people with a lot of experience and talents and skills.
Yeah, it sounds like your job title got shorter and the list of things to do got a lot longer.
A little bit.
A
little bit, yeah.
So talk to me a little bit, if you don't mind, about the pandemic.
Sure.
And of all the folks we've talked to, obviously it impacted everyone in different ways, but I can't imagine a bigger impact from a professional life standpoint than it had on you. Did the Coliseum see any of this coming? So many people didn't. Did you see anything coming, and how did you react, and what did the world look like for the past 18 or so months?
Well, we did see some things coming on the horizon. As a county department, we have a very, very close connection with the Allen County Department of Health.
Yeah.
And so we were involved in a couple meetings. We hosted a meeting, I think, in late February or something like that, where it was a lot of community leaders coming together to kind of learn some things from the health department. And of course, in my role, one of my core responsibilities is being the buildings liaison for NCAA events. So you've heard this story before, I know you have, where 2020 was lined up to be...
It's going to be a big year.
A banner year for us. For NCAA, with 2 events scheduled in March. We had 4 concerts that were nearly sold out that were going to be happening in April, May, June of last year. And we started to see some things. We started to hear some things. Randy, obviously very tuned into the venue industry as a whole, very... and just very knowledgeable about those things. And information was coming at him from a lot of different angles. So we kind of knew what the potential concerns were.
Yeah.
Until it really hit that second week of March, we had no idea what.
Yeah. Well, it was so unprecedented. I don't think anybody did.
And so obviously going from everything on paper was going to be probably the Coliseum's best year ever, to overall at the end of the year, a loss of about $4 million.
Wow.
Was in so many ways just shocking. So obviously some of our staff and being county employees, we were those who could work at home did work from home. We had some people that were put on leave. And so, as a part of the senior management team, when we officially closed, there were basically 7 of us that each took a day. So when there was nothing at the building, I was assigned Monday, or somebody else was assigned Tuesday. And the only person at the building was our 24/7 security person who was tucked away in our command center. And then the senior management member who was there for the day, just kind of overseeing things. We pivoted pretty well with Zoom technology. We all learned all of that really quick. With transferring phones to cell phones and all that stuff. So we were able to keep up pretty well. And I think we were out of the office for, 5 weeks. Total. Yeah. And then we started coming back slowly. And obviously our relationship with the Allen County Department of Health was just really, really deep at that time, trying to get an understanding. And as we reopened, doing events again, starting in June of 2020, I was really, really involved in working with them on determining what a banquet setup looks like with social distancing in mind. And so working with, and because we didn't have catering sales and event coordinators, and we had to furlough several folks, I became a jack of all trades. And I tell you, I learned so much. But the biggest thing I learned is how blessed I was for the team members that I have when they were able to come back finally after. Some of them came back after a year. A couple of them came back a little bit later. But so we just kind of kept things going as much as we could. We were able to host some events in the summer of 2020 that we weren't ever going to be able to host just due to space availability. Like our normal events had all canceled, but then other events started coming up and working with the Department of Health and the restrictions. And so my role was very much more than just marketing and sales during this time. So I became an event coordinator, and a lot of our clients were very, very happy when our regular event coordinators were able to come back. Because they were able to have somebody they knew.
So the most recent, not the most recent experience, but the first experience I had at the Coliseum after everything started to stabilize was the vaccination.
Of course.
And that was extremely well run. I remember when I heard about it, like all of us, I think I was a little bit concerned about what's this going to look like. And it could not have been more easy. And I almost came out of the Coliseum saying that was it. That was almost too easy, but really well done to your staff on that.
Well, as a community asset like we are, our first really big opportunity to serve in a role similar to that was the early voting prior to the election. And that same space, we call Expo 4, a lot of people call it the basement, that was the early voting location. And so we were able to host the Allen County Election Board. And then, of course, we kind of moved from that into the vaccine clinic starting in early January this year, 21. So daily interaction with Mindy Waldron and her team at the Department of Health. And part of my role now is to help them in their process of they've reopened the vaccine clinic. And so, it has been a joy to try to serve the community when we weren't able to have all of our events. And the beauty about the building is it's flexible. We can have multiple events. That's how we operate most efficiently, is have multiple events going on at the same time. And so we were able to do that with some less used space and provide us a really good option for the community to take advantage of the vaccine clinic.
Well, and what was the first event when you were back to, I don't want to say normalcy, but close to normalcy? Was it Comets Games? Was there something that preceded that?
When we were able to start the Comets season, a little bit delayed, starting in February, I believe it was, in 2021, they were going to have a shortened season. That's when we felt like, and as we got closer to the playoffs, which we all know ultimately ended up with a championship, that's when it started to feel real. Like when restrictions were easing, and through the playoffs, that's when it really felt like, okay, we're back. That was prior to the Delta variant, obviously, coming back and, causing problems for us again. But that's really when it felt like we were truly back, was that Comets playoff run.
Okay.
Where we had, what was it, 9,000 on a Thursday night and then almost 11,000 on a Saturday night, or I'm not sure the exact days. All I know is that we were really, really, really happy they won when they did. Yeah. Because the next game would have been a lot harder for our staffing situation. And so we were never bigger fans for that game that they ended up winning.
Sure. Well, that's great. So now that, there's a lot of uncertainty right now, of course, but what are some of the things, and obviously only talk about the things you can talk about, but what are some of the things on the horizon that you're working on, the things that are, big on your to-do list, that are maybe exciting, maybe a little scary, maybe a combination of things?
I think, obviously, my role still is involved with working with Visit Fort Wayne and as the primary liaison between the building and the NCAA. So we are actually going to be hosting. We have been awarded hosting responsibilities for the Division III Men's Basketball National Championship all the way through 2026.
That's great. Congratulations.
Thank you. So a lot of hard work with Visit Fort Wayne. Stephanie Coleman, before she left Visit Fort Wayne, went to Turnstone, was my partner in crime when it came to selling the Coliseum, selling Fort Wayne as a sports host.
And Visit Fort Wayne is currently, and I will disclaim that we're recording this in October. It might not be out until December. That's currently an open position with Visit Fort Wayne, correct?
Yes. They're in their search process with Dan in leadership. But, just a great relationship with everybody there at Visit Fort Wayne. So the NCAA is one of those things where it's going to be here with us for a while and hopefully beyond that. That's one of my exciting, events that coming up into the horizon. Part of what I really enjoy about my role is on any given day, I could be talking to a bride planning their wedding reception and talking to a promoter that's looking for a space for a Slipknot concert. And honestly, I could be working on anything in between those. Those two.
Or a Slipknot themed wedding.
Or a Slipknot. We've had those. It is just the amazing variety of things that I get to work on. It's, trying to help our staff wrap their heads around a new room diagramming system, potentially from our software provider. So that's an exciting project, which will help us be more efficient internally. But from events, it's, we've had Donald Trump bring campaign rallies here twice in the last several years. It's, I might be the person taking that call from who knows where to start planning that event. And then that's the only thing I'm working on for the next 3 weeks, month, whatever. So it is just a huge, amazing variety of events that we get to be a part of. During the pandemic last summer, a majority of my job was working with brides and grooms to try to get their events in within the attendance restrictions, within room capacity, social distancing and all that. And there was one couple that we had to find a different space that was larger. And so in a meeting, they just threw out a crazy idea. Why don't we just do our wedding and reception on the arena floor? And we pulled it off, and it was just an incredible event. And so much so that, they're never going to forget that environment. It was a larger space. It wasn't obviously traditional,
Sure.
but having the flexibility to do that kind of thing is a lot of fun.
Yeah, and they were able to, if I understand the Coliseum nomenclature correctly, so you're able to say you got married on the same floor where Elvis performed, right?
That's absolutely correct.
Yeah, that's
absolutely
pretty great.
correct.
That's a pretty good thing to be able to say.
Yeah, so it's just, we like to say, I tell people all the time, people come to the Coliseum to have fun. Mm-hmm. They generally don't come there expecting bad things or expecting to be, experience something negative. Mm-hmm. They expect to be entertained. They expect their adrenaline to go up, when they're watching a sporting event, or they expect to take pride in seeing their children experience something for the first time, whether it be a Sesame Street Live show or a Monster Truck show or their first Comets game.
Or a graduation.
Yeah. And a lot of times I think, how many people in Northeast Indiana and beyond have walked across our stages and experienced a monumental moment in their life?
Sure.
And in a very small way, we were a part of making that happen.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's what keeps me just energized by what I do and what I want to do for the future.
Yeah.
Is provide that venue to make those memories.
Well, and I think it's important to keep that sense of urgency, because for you and your team, it's kind of second nature. This stuff happens all the time.
Correct.
But, when others are there, it might be their only time there.
Correct.
Or just a few times a year. I mean, it's funny because as we're talking, I'm thinking of some of the events I've attended, and I'm remembering more and more, everything from graduations to Paul McCartney concert to sporting events. And it's a longer list than I would have imagined coming into this conversation. Yeah.
In my role, I've been fortunate to, especially in the marketing role, spend time with some of the performers, the artists, the guests who've been here. And so that has given me a little bit different perspective. Not everybody gets to do that. So I feel like I'm very blessed with the ability to meet Elton John. Yeah. And it's just a really unique situation where who would have thought I would have had that opportunity?
Yeah.
So it's a lot of fun, and it will continue to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, all I can say is I met Brian Engelhardt, so you're way up on me. So let's go to the speed round of the show. I'm going to ask you a few questions. There's one curveball I'm going to throw you. I'm actually going to throw you two curveballs at the same time, but you're going to be very adept at hitting those both out of the park. So the first question, one that is not a curveball. Tell us your best career advice. You mentioned you have a daughter, I believe it is, who's wrapping up high school. If you were talking to her or someone else who is looking to get started in a career or making a career change, what would you say is the key to success in building a successful career?
And we talked before we started recording, I'm going to give credit where credit's due. This thought really kind of originated in this conversation from my wife. Don't just sit and decide something. Inaction is probably the enemy to success, just because you have to take chances, take risks, calculated risks, be strategic about things. But if you're really caught between two situations, the more you kind of just sit and let things come to you, the harder it's going to be successful. Yeah,
I think that's great advice. It's he who hesitates is lost, or the other cliche is either win or you learn, and I think there's truth in both of those.
Yeah. Mistakes happen. In my role, currently at the Coliseum, there are some new things coming at me, and it's like, I know I'm going to make mistakes, but Randy used to always say, as long as you don't do it again, as long as you don't make the same mistake twice, that's good.
Well, and that's a great characteristic in a leader. I've always had that here at Asher, where you're expected to learn from mistakes, but it's not terminal if you make one.
Absolutely.
And certainly the spirit has always been, hey, we're all human. We're going to make mistakes. Let's work together to make sure they don't happen again, but forgive each other when they do happen.
Yeah, and obviously, as my career has been progressing, people have seen in me potential, and I'm most grateful for that. That maybe there were times where I didn't see potential in myself, but other people saw it. And that's what's important, that you continue working towards that. So.
Yeah, for sure. All right, here come the 2 curveballs.
Okay.
So if you need to pass on either of these questions or go to question 3 so you can think about them further, that is fair game. The 2 curveballs are as follow. What's your favorite event that you've ever been part of at the Coliseum? And the second part of the question is, and you just encouraged this by what you were talking about, who's your favorite well-known person that you've met as part of your work at the Coliseum?
Ooh, that's a tough set.
Yeah.
Favorite. Shoot.
Or one of your favorites. I'll ease it up a little bit.
It's really interesting. The first several years of my career in my role, I was very involved in working with concert promoters directly, photographers who were approved. So I stood next to the stage for a lot of concerts. And later in my career, that whole experience has been less and less like exciting to me.
Yeah, sure.
But and so probably working just the concerts.
Yeah.
Being in the Arena Bowl, standing on the floor, usually standing in close proximity to where the sound mixer board is on the back of the floor, and the really, really good performers build their show to where that first song is when they haven't, revealed where they're standing or their faces or anything, and what the production quality of the show does to kind of build that crescendo up until the big curtain drop or light reveal or something like that. That adrenaline. So in a way to answer that question, my favorite experiences at events is just that.
Okay.
Standing on the floor of the arena, feeling the adrenaline of the crowd as they start to cheer, knowing that the headliner is about ready to reveal themselves, whether it's flying in from the ceiling or coming out of the stage floor. That just the amazing adrenaline that just runs through the building. Yeah. In that moment is, I think, my favorite experience there.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Favorite person? I met so many of them. And when I say meet artists, it's very, very cursory. It's we're not talking about, we're not swapping recipes or anything like that. It's very, very kind of basic. I rode an elevator with Jason Aldean and Luke Bryan, 2 really huge country music stars. If you're a country music fan, you know those names. And to see that they are everyday normal people who obviously know each other, and are talking to each other like they're neighbors. Yeah. But I'm just happen to be over in the corner in the elevator going up to a different level of the building. And it's just like, that was an interesting experience just to see them in a non-performance light. Yeah. So it was very interesting. Yeah. So many of them.
Oh, sure.
Darius Rucker. In high school, I was a fan of Hootie and the Blowfish. Yep. But later in the career, obviously followed him in terms of his country music career. Some of the greatest musical performance, probably one of the greatest musical performance I've ever seen, was Darius Rucker performing Prince's Purple Rain.
Oh, wow.
To a sold-out Coliseum Arena. Huh. And just the emotion and everything that went into him performing that song was just incredible. Yeah. One of the favorite songs I've ever heard or seen live.
Oh, that's pretty great. That's pretty great. And in your venue, how do you like that?
I know. Yeah. I know. And I've seen him at other venues too.
So last question, and you've alluded to this a little bit, but if we can synthesize it, we've all been through a lot in the last year and a half, and hopefully better days are ahead shortly. But what did you learn during the pandemic that you didn't know before that you think will stick with you moving forward, either from a career perspective, a marketing perspective, or just in general?
From a career perspective, that's pretty simple. And you really get to understand how blessed I am to be in the position that I'm in, to have the support of the team. Just you hear so many stories of, of people and instability. And I've been really, really blessed and grateful for that. From a marketing perspective, clear, concise communication about things is so critical. We dealt with probably, I don't know, if you take the 4 or 5 concerts that were postponed, a combination of 4 or 5 times each, and communicating to the public, whether it be on social media or press release or talking to media about those situations, is that if you're not absolutely perfectly clear and concise, things can get really misconstrued. And it's like the telephone game. If you get a detail wrong or get a detail a little unclear about, the difference between canceled and postponed.
Yeah.
Learned really quick about how, that sort of detail fact is so critical. So,
sure.
And just the second thing is just the ability to adapt. You can't, in this day and age, you just can't get married to a certain way of doing things.
Yeah.
You have to adapt. Like for us at the Coliseum, I think we may have seen the last of our printed newsletter that I designed many of, and it probably is not coming back at this point.
Yeah.
But, you do things like email more, and of course the e-commerce and social medias,
And who knew that the QR code was going to come back?
I had no idea.
Here it is. Yeah, the resurgence of the QR code.
That was a new one for me.
Yeah. Well, Nathan, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure having you on, and thanks for all the work you do. It's a great venue. We're really lucky to have it. So thank you. And thanks to everyone who took the opportunity to listen to this week's episode of the Asher Marketing Podcast. We hope you'll join us again next week, and we'll be back with another great guest.